So many people new to Filecoin. Great, Filecoin 101. My name is Hubert. For those of you that don't know, worked at ChainSafe, been able to contribute to Forest Filecoin for the past 2.5 years. And that one there is a photo that my boss asked me to put because apparently he sees me that way. And there is a Rust joke there. Next, throughout this presentation, we'll be looking into what is actually a Filecoin implementation, what are the available implementations these days, and then we'll look into Forest in detail. I'll be adding quite a bit of links in the slides, so you don't have to memorize them or write them down. The link to the slides will be provided later. So, what is a Filecoin implementation? I thought about this for quite a bit and turned out it's not that easy to answer because if we would impose too many restrictions on the definition, it may be that the implementation I am representing wouldn't be on the list. So, So, in essence, it's a node running software specific to the Filecoin blockchain. That is not very specific. Well, it can be anything just running CURL, I guess. So let's try something more strict. It adheres to the Filecoin protocol. Well, this is better, but is it the entire Filecoin protocol? Part of the Filecoin protocol? I won't talk about Filecoin protocol much because I have a flight to catch on Friday and I don't intend to miss it. It's a beast. Okay, so let's try something that the node I'm representing matches. At minimum, it shall sync to the chain, shall follow it, and it will maintain consensus. It will do it over a peer-to-peer layer. And this is what, in my eyes, a Filecoin implementation should do at minimum. It can support retrievals and mining and storage, but doesn't have to, please. Otherwise, no Forest here. What kind of nodes do we have out there? There are light nodes, which are basically connecting to the full nodes. It is one of the modes available in Lotus. They are very lightweight. They are only storing block header data. We have full nodes that are actually following the chain. They use all the state from the last 2000 epochs, I believe, which is more or less 16 hours. Everything else can be garbage collected, so you don't have to constantly add new disks. They require significantly more better hardware, but you can still likely use them at least at their bare minimum capabilities on a commodity hardware. And then you have archival nodes, which store all the Filecoin data, which is quite a lot. It's like 20, 40 terabytes of data. You need quite a bit of disk space, obviously, and to just store it, to import it, and you need even more hardware, more sophisticated hardware to actually process it and do anything useful with this data. And Forest came up with this idea of a stateless node that doesn't match any of the requirements of the previous slide, except for the communication over the peer-to-peer layer. So it's just there for connecting peers with other peers. It should use as little resources as possible. It adheres to the Filecoin protocol for network, for the peer-to-peer. It claims it speaks all of those protocols, but it doesn't do much else. But it's still work in progress. And behold, the Filecoin Trinity. Like 2 years ago, there was a fourth implementation, Fuhan, in C++. And it's, well, I wouldn't be able to use Trinity then. I don't know what I would have to use, quadruple, I don't know. Yeah, but it's no longer there. So we've got Lotus. It's written in Go. It's maintained by the Philos team. It's the reference Filecoin implementation. That said, that is to say, there is a Filecoin spec, but the actual truth is in the Lotus code. Like you can look into the documentation, but if you really want to see how things work and should work, they maybe work, you go into Lotus implementation. That's what we do in Forest extensively. Sometimes we find issues there, but mostly we find issues in Forest. That is the truth. It connects to it integrates with Filecoin virtual machine via foreign function interface. I'll be talking about it more later, but basically because FVM is written in Rust and Lotus is written in Go, so you have to have some interfacing there. It is fully featured, meaning that whatever you want to have on is claimed to be on Filecoin available. Well, it is likely implemented by Lotus. That's storage, retrievals, mining. It is the reference for the JSON RPC. And it's the first implementation to roll out all the network improvements. For the JSON RPC, I'll be talking more about it later, and I will also invite you to a great talk by David later today that will touch about it more. I actually did an experiment 2 weeks ago, and with Nebula DHT crawler, and it turned out that over 95% of total nodes, crawlable nodes on the mainnet network, are Lotus. Disclaimer: those are reachable nodes. This number doesn't include this percentage doesn't include nodes that are hidden behind the Great Firewall of China, or they are actively blocking connections in any other way. But this gives some idea about the state of the network. Without Lotus, it would be difficult, I guess. Then there is Venus. I have zero experiences with Venus. These are the things I took from the documentation, and one thing I found there was pretty interesting. It's also written in Go. It's supposedly compatible with Lotus. Also uses FVM via foreign function interface, fully featured. Its key feature is support for the Chinese language and the Chinese market. And what I found is that Venus has excellent naming. What do I mean? Well, in Lotus, we've got those Lotus Seed, Lotus Worker, Lotus Shed. I don't think it really works with the entire Protocol Labs interplanetary thingies. I mean, it's fine, but at least Lotus Miner will be replaced by Curio. It's more interesting. Forest. Forest is just boring. It's like reading Java Enterprise classes names. I mean, just boring. And then we have Venus. And Venus uses those names from Liu Cixin, The Free Body Problem, an excellent science fiction book. I highly recommend it. Sophon, Damocles, Droplet. Come on. We know who is the winner here in this contest. And on to the Forest, maintained by ChainSafe systems. It's the only implementation written in not Go, that is Rust. Its focus is on It's focused on performance and low resource consumption. That is to say, the idea is to work on a commodity hardware, but from better hardware like the very expensive Threadrippers. There is also, we want to work there fast as well. It offers native AVM support because it's written in Rust, AVM is written in Rust. We don't have to do any interfacing. It's not fully featured, so I'm just going to name a few of its features separately. It does chain verification. It has bootstrapping capabilities. It has partial support with for the JSON RPC of Lotus. It is for many operations. It's already covered. Like for mining, we should have it all, but it's still not 100%. It's a work in progress. Also, work in progress on defining what should be the interface. One of its key features is fast snapshot generation. For us does it pretty fast on basic hardware. Has a specialized car format. Car format is what snapshots are represented in a car format, and Forest does it a bit differently. It's a format in which it uses ZSTD frames there, and at the end of the file there is an index. So Forest can use those files, those specialized car files directly without importing them into the database. Just use this index at the end of the file, so it saves some time on importing it, which is pretty helpful, especially in the context of archival nodes, where you would have to import 20 terabytes of data into your Badger DB. It would be quite painful with loss of reindex, or parity DB, it would also be painful. And there is a separate wallet binary if you would wish. How we work together? We work together on implementing what is defined in FIPs. That's about it. We integrate those FIPs into network upgrades. And we need to collaborate with each other based on those network upgrades. We need to schedule them. We need to decide what are we able to actually implement in a given timeline. We need to test those upgrades, and in 2 days there will be a calibration network upgrade, so adding quite a bit of new things. We have to agree on set standards for interoperability, which is for example, this JSON RPC. It is work in progress. We are basically starting kind of on this, and we find bugs in each other's implementations, which is very important. I feel like those monkeys scratching each other's back and finding bugs. Very important thing. Challenges, performance, the state is constantly growing. The mainnet snapshots are, 100 gigabytes, 70 gigabytes right now, something like this. So we need to be able to run them on commodity hardware still. Otherwise, everyone would have to use quite an expensive piece of hardware to just integrate with Filecoin. So I'm not talking about mining, but just sending a few fill. Like you should be able to do it on a simple machine. Security, we work in a trustless environment, so it would be great if a single wild node that is a single wild peer that is able to connect to the network wouldn't crash the entire network. That's a noble goal. Want to be interoperable? Is it the word? No. meaning that we want to be able to switch from one implementation to another seamlessly. Say there is a bug in one implementation and Lotus, we want to switch it seamlessly with Forest, or the other way around, be it for performance reasons, security reasons, or just if someone is a Rust zealot and they want to have Rust everywhere. Well, compliance, and it's we need to agree on the protocol itself. We need to maintain consensus if one implementation doesn't do that. For example, for the latest FIP 91 for legacy Ethereum transactions, if we didn't implement that, well, the network upgrade in 2 days wouldn't work great with Forest. The ecosystem, we are not working in the void. We have many other core libraries and supporting libraries. There are actors. There is Filecoin virtual machine written in Rust. All of the implementations use those. So if there is a bug in the actors or a VM code, well, we are all in trouble. There are also libraries that are specific to the technology we use, like Go Rust. For example, ones for cryptographic primitives and peer-to-peer. There are libraries specific to Filecoin that Lotus and Venus can use together, as in Go state types, which handles the state and the migrations, for example. In Forest, we have to do it our way. And there are specs which act as the source of truth. Definitely not Lotus implementation, right? Yeah, just what I mentioned. All the nodes they use built-in actors, and EVM might be the arrows may not be that correct. I think the actors should go to EVM from the node, but that's basically it. And then let's look into Forest in depth. Well, everything was already mentioned. We are funded by the Falcon Foundation, and the first commit was almost 5 years ago. You can install Forest at quite a bit of options there. Compile it from source, but with the fancy Rust way, with crates.io. Use a Docker image if you don't have a strong machine, or you just don't bother. I actually prefer that way. Or you can download binaries from GitHub. Structure, well, already mentioned this very nice naming that we have in Forest. There is a Forest daemon, which is the actual Falcon implementation. It does. It has those layers of that do different things. Chain layer, it maintains consensus, adds new blocks, creates tip sets. The network layer, the RPC layer that is used for accepting the JSON RPC methods. For persistence, we use ParityDB, created by Parity. I believe it's specialized for block stores, and so it is very, very performant in our scenarios. We used RocksDB previously and found that ParityDB is way better. We have garbage collection that was recently fixed. And health checks, metrics, all of the operation things that are useful on operating the node, and many other features that I will not mention now. And there is Forest CLI. It's used to interact with the daemons, so you don't have to use CURL with long JSON payloads. You can just use the Forest CLI that wraps basically those RPC commands in a nice interface. Then can be used to do numerous things with Forest, and you can do snapshot exports, for example. There is Forest tool, which is basically a Forest shed. It can do all things that we didn't bother to wrap in another binary, like benchmarking some functions, car files manipulation. That is pretty useful for example, in the context of archival nodes. You can merge several snapshot files together. So later on, you could import it as a single file. There is offline API server. You can use a set of snapshot files and then serve it to query some historical data, and you wouldn't have to have the overhead of following the chain, of maintaining network connections. It's offline. And there is also a JSON RPC conformance tool that you can use to check the conformance with any other implementation. So it can be is Forest conformant with Forest, or with Lotus, or is Lotus conformant with Venus? You can do all those kinds of things. There is Forest Wallet for managing Filecoin wallets. And what is Forest great at? We are pretty good at generating snapshots. We do it way faster than Lotus, in 15 minutes on my personal machine, over 2 hours with Lotus on a machine on a decent machine that is more powerful than mine. We've been running Forest Snapshot service since January 2024. We've been the default one for snapshots in the ecosystem. It's been working fine. We do upload those custom snapshots that are also compatible with Lotus and Venus. We got retro funding via retro PGF for this service, actually. And it may be that other methods are also significantly more performant in Forest, but this hasn't been benchmarked, so I have no proof of that. So I may be hallucinating. But I would expect that they are also pretty decent when it comes to performance. Hardware requirements, well, they are lower in Forest, but this table is not that, I would say. It's from the website, but I would say it's not that a fair of a comparison, because Lotus does way more things than Forest, so it's not that, but it's there. And we do use less resources. We use different technology and approach to things with Forest. We use Rust. It helps us catch different bugs, both in our implementation and in other implementations. It opens up the ecosystem to the builders proficient in Rust, and those that just don't want to use any other language than Rust. And it encourages, because it's a completely different approach, and encourages common APIs between those different Filecoin implementations. But it's not all that good. We have no mining, no storage, no retrievals. So at the moment, there is no incentive to run Forest. You won't get any fill for running Forest, sadly. Most products are integrated with Lotus. We need to just accept it and comply. The JSON implementation is not complete. It's complete for some use cases, but not for everything. So we need to work on this. It may not work, for example, for what I used last week. I tried to use Coinbase wallet. Didn't work with Forest. It worked fine with Lotus. And it's not as battle tested as other implementations because there are just so many Lotus users. They use Lotus in so many different ways that creators wouldn't even dream of. Well, it's so that much better tested. What are our plans for 2024? Well, it's the JSON RPC interface, obviously. We have a nice GitHub project for tracking what is actually implemented and tested. Sometimes we implement things but not test them, apparently. Yeah. So you can, for your own use case, you can just look it up and see if Forest just maybe you are already able to replace something with Forest. Yeah, so we plan to expand on the JSON RPC. Be sure to go to David's talk later today. With that, we want to support and test Forest with Curio, of which you will hear more in a few minutes, I guess. We also want to do documentation overhaul. I have enough experience in my life, in my professional life, that I would say it's a stretch goal and it never happened. Please don't tell it to my boss. And we also plan to have a security audit. Yeah, a bunch of links. Bunch of more links to talks about Forest and Forest snapshots, or just Filecoin snapshots. Slides to download if you want. No? So questions.